Smooth 98.1, love music, love life. It's 7:30 a.m. and time for Freshly Pressed 981. I am Ayo Myro Essay, and today joining me on the show, I have Ugodre. Good morning, Ugo. Good to have you on the show.
Hey, Ayo, morning. How you doing? Good to be
I'm
here.
very well, thank you. Great to have you, and congratulations on Nairametrics winning the Gauge Awards. I think it's very well deserved. So on behalf of the Freshly Pressed team, congratulations.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Fantastic. We're hopefully going to be joined by Cheta, who's going to tune in as well to join us to analyze today's news stories. And then you can also be a part of the show by going onto YouTube. We're streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. You would see the live, that we are live, and you can watch that video. And then you can also send us a WhatsApp message on 0809 444 0981. You can tweet at us at smooth981FM. Kindly use the hashtag freshlypressed981. Well, Ugo, it's a good thing you're starting the stories this morning. So we'll go straight to our first story for today. And that is that Senate gives ministry others ultimatum over 7.5 billion naira secret withdrawal. This story was taken from the New Telegraph. You know, when you read that headline, you wonder, how can you have a secret withdrawal at government level, you know, with regards to due processes and transparency? But let's see the details. The Senate Committee on Public Accounts yesterday gave the Ministry of Finance, Office of Accountants General of the Federation, and Office of the National Security Advisor 6 days to explain the alleged secret withdrawal of 7.5 billion naira. The withdrawal was allegedly made from the 2% National Automotive Council Design and Development Council levy account domiciled with the Central Bank of Nigeria. Please break this story down for us, Ugo.
Yeah, apparently there was if you've been following this story for a while, I think the first time we had this story was 2 weeks ago. And the Auditor General put out a report claiming that there was some money missing, 7.5 billion, between 2000 and 2006. Can you imagine, like way back? So it's not even recent.
Not
2000 and 2006. And the money was withdrawn from the accounts of the National Automotive Council Design and Development Council. I don't know, maybe that's a mistake because you can have council twice. So National Automotive Design and Development Council, exactly. A lot of people probably haven't heard of that parastatal before. There's just so many government agencies out there, and sometimes you ask yourself, I wonder what they're doing. Imagine an agency that has that kind of money, 7.5 billion, ASA 2000. I mean, this was when exchange rate was like,
by the way, of the entire budget. So 7.5 billion
was huge. That's the kind of amount accruing to them that time, and this was at exchange rate of maybe it's something naira to the dollar, back then, 2000. And so the report claimed that 3.7 billion was withdrawn between March and December, while another 3.8 billion was withdrawn in two installments, 2.8 billion in 2005 and 1 billion in 2006. So that basically, was the background of this, and that's what the Senate is trying to investigate. So sometimes you look at it and you ask yourself, like, what do we gain by investigating something that happened, like, decades ago or 2 decades ago or something? Like, where's this going to lead to? I mean, a lot of the people who may have been involved in these transactions are probably retired or doing some other thing, probably not in government anymore. This was the regime of the first president in this democratic era, Obasanjo. So, but then personally, I think that what they should be focusing on is if there was money collected at that time. Firstly, was that money returned because it was a loan? It was used to buy cars for another parastatal. Was it refunded? And then did they actually buy the cars that they claim, that was bought? Interesting to note that the money also found its way to a private company as well. So I guess these are probably things that I'm not really sure it's really the Senate's, the Senate should be the ones, investigating. I think there are just too many other things bothering this country that they should be focusing on. This should just be sent to, maybe the EFCC or the
Yes.
ICPC to investigate, and then go send the report back to them, and then they can now make a resolution to the federal government to implement whatever findings that is in there. So that's my own that's my take here.
I want to even ask you, I know it should be quite straightforward, but because we hear a number of times in the news where we have the Senate summoning a parastatal or a government official, what's the end point? So when they investigate clear cases of fraud like this, what's the end point? Is it for them to make a recommendation? Are they focusing on what they shouldn't really be focusing on, like you mentioned, with the myriad of issues in Nigeria, and that there are many things we've called for them to do. Some on the president, some on security chiefs, etc. We haven't seen that being followed through, and they are investigating misappropriation of fraudulent activities. Is that within their remit, or do you think they should just allow the relevant authorities, like you mentioned, the FCC, take charge?
Yes. So, I mean, it's within their ambits to decide or to determine what they want to investigate. But we know that there's not enough time and there's not enough resources, and there's just too many things in this country. There are a lot of this was something that happened 2 decades ago or thereabouts, or a decade and a half ago, and we are in 2021, and there's a lot of stuff still going on now that they probably should be, turning their searchlight on. You wonder why the Auditor General is sending out in the reports, about 2 decades ago. I'm sure there are probably a lot more things to talk about now. But I mean, it still probably goes to show that regardless of what may have happened years ago, people can still be held accountable if there were a lot of shenanigans that are caught back then. So yes, I mean, the Senate can investigate things like, but I prefer, like I said earlier, that things like this should just be sent to ICPC to investigate, or and if there are process breaches here, and then people should be held accountable to it. That's just my thinking. We're even lucky that they did not even burn the report. Normally they go and burn things like this, but it's good they did not burn it.
Please don't give suggestions, Ugo, because it doesn't mean that it's still being investigated. All right, okay, let's move on to our next story here. And we're looking at, I don't like the headline, more trouble for Nigeria. We already have enough troubles. Don't put it up there. But Premium Times reports more trouble for Nigeria as fuel subsidy wipes off oil revenue. Now, reading through this report, Ugo, I have to admit that it is troublesome and it is worrisome. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, has said that it will remit nothing into the Federation account in the month of May due to costs incurred from subsidy payments on petrol. The NNPC made this known in a letter written to the Accountant General of the Federation, where it explained that it recorded a value shortfall of 111 billion naira in February 2021. Now, this will affect its contributions to federal allocations, and the federal allocation is highly dependent on remittances from the NNPC. So what is going to happen to us as a nation and finances and what's been budgeted for with expectations from the NNPC?
Well, with this kind of reports, you can only expect one thing, there's something that you are assured of. The government will not run without money. I think the rest assured. So what I do expect would happen is the CBN will step in, as they've usually done, and they've done over the years. And they will step in using the the provisions of the ways and means. So they would step in and provide some backstop, whatever funding shortfall the CBN has, the government has to share with other states. That's one. Another thing is that there are also other parastatals that the government relies on for revenue, even though you can't compare it to the kind of revenue that they can get from NNPC. But be that as it may, I don't believe that the NNPC is out of money. It's not just possible. Those guys spend a lot of money. I mean, on paper they might be broke, or their balance sheet might have holes, but there's a lot of money in the NNPC, and that's why you see them saying that a lot of people call NNPC the ATM of the federal government. Yes, oil subsidy is a challenge. I think that a lot of us have advocated for its removal because it's not something that should continue. But then this just shows that if you continue on this path, like we have done in the last 16, 17, 18, 20 years, it's not. This is what is going to end up, in government being completely broke and out of money, right? And then you have CBN continue to backstop, and if CBN continues to backstop, something else is suffering. Yeah, because CBN is probably issuing bonds, which means rising debt for Nigeria to fund government expenses. Over the last few years, CBN has spent about 10 trillion, lending money to the government and through these ways and means. And this 10 trillion, it's now offering back, to banks and other institutional investors as some form of loans or bonds, and that is also going to come at a cost. So that's the implication here. It's just inevitable that subsidy will be taken off at some point. The issue today is just poverty. There's just issues around poverty, so that's why things are very hard. So it's a bit difficult for government to want to just add a lot more pressure on Nigerians. But you know what? I think that Nigerians have been through a lot already, and Nigerians, have a way of adjusting to these things. Yes, if you remove subsidy, fuel prices will go up, inflation will keep going up. But I think that at some point in time, things will level out, and you see a lot of new entrants into the business. I've spoken to a few downstream players, and the impression is that, look, there's room to cut inefficiencies. That is the reason why prices are high. Fuel prices are high whenever exchange rate goes up or whenever oil prices go up. That if you take away those inefficiencies, prices should definitely go down. A lot of the big oil marketers, I don't want to name names, they don't even import fuel anymore. So NNPC is just the sole importer. So imagine if you had a lot of people importing, there's going to be a lot of efficiency around there, and then prices should go down. So that's the challenge. So we can't continue like this, Ayo. They just have to find a way.
That's fine, the way. It's a conversation we've been having, and I see a number of comments reflecting that with regards to subsidy, and we just have to find a way around it. Now, talking about poverty, as you mentioned, that's one of the biggest challenges we have. The next story talks or speaks to that. Thisday reports that the federal government has approved policy documents on fighting poverty. The Federal Executive Council yesterday approved the National Poverty Reduction with Growth Strategy, NPRGS, since we like acronyms in the country, submitted by the Presidential Economic Advisory Council, PEAC. The FEC also approved 2.1, and then talks about, it breaks down, the conclusions from the Federal Executive Council meeting. But please take us through or talk us through this policy document on fighting poverty, which is going to be chaired by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo.
Well, I haven't read the document, and the article did not speak to, maybe key provisions in the document or key focus. All I can say is that, the solution to fighting poverty is not in a book. It's not in some, report or some book or some committee. We all know, the solution to fighting poverty in Nigeria, and there are several reports that have been written across the country and globally, whether it's through World Bank or whether it's through government agencies. There are just so many, and what we haven't seen is a lot of action, right? People have blamed, government policies. People have blamed ease of doing business. People have blamed, access to funding and finance. So they know what these things are, and all you need to see. I don't think you need any government committee or setup or people to come together and come and start to waste and spend money again just to look for a solution to poverty. I mean, things like this can be very infuriating. People need food. People need jobs, right? People need, the economy, the informal economy, to start to thrive again, right? And then when you have the Nigerians are very enterprising people, and Nigerians look out for themselves a lot. All they need is just the tools to work and, an enabling environment. Once that is there, people would naturally fight poverty. We are not really the type of people who, who like to rely a lot, on government or some kind of, we've gone throughout independence without social security, just like you have in richer countries. So, fighting security, introduce very good policies, and then we won't have any issues at all. Poverty rates will go down, but you've seen that over the years, things have worsened, mostly because of, a lot of the way the government is handling the economy and the country in general. So a lot of the increase in poverty you're seeing now is even mostly attributed to insecurity issues. So you have a lot of people from, internal displaced locations around the country, flowed all the way to Lagos and other parts of the country where they think, the economy is a lot better. And that is what, that is what is also driving our poverty, rates or numbers high. So, and then when you have things like, fuel subsidy or maybe electricity price increases come all of a sudden, rather than allowing it, go through the natural cause, then poverty also increases because people are not very well prepared. So it's a different thing when you increase prices gradually than when you just boom, increase prices, at a go. It just worsens things for people. So yeah, I don't believe in all these reports. And in terms of the 2.1 billion facility maintenance fee or so that they mentioned, from what the report also says, is they want to use it to buy or to operate and maintain a 10 megawatt power plant and, call that what you want. We say that the government doesn't have money, NNPC doesn't have money, but, there's money for things like this, right? There would always be money for things like that because people have to chop. You understand? Yeah, people have to still, run government and stuff like that. So these are just some of the contradictions you see sometimes, and you just worry and ask yourself, I mean, God, like, are we really all in the same country or not?
Are we? Interestingly, just on a lighter note, when you said people still have to steal, or people have to steal, and it's paused, I thought, oh, you meant that they had to allocate money because people still have to steal before you completed and said have to steal run government. So it's good that you completed that statement. But it looks like we're running solo today. Let me take a few comments from our listeners. Barrister Dan Okuda from Igondo says the National Assembly should concentrate on their core mandate more often than not. So going back to the story on investigations, that their investigation is a mere waste of public funds as nothing tangible comes out of their investigation. Ian says, please, how many times do we have to remove this all subsidy? And this has been echoed by a number of comments this morning. Someone said, and he says, I thought we removed it already like thrice now. Is it an evil spirit that can be removed or cast out several times and keeps coming back? Or is it me not understanding? And someone else had shared that sentiment. Ugo, please just expand this a little, because indeed we've heard that, taking out subsidy, then we come back to here, okay, we're still paying subsidies. Now, it means that we're not able to remit any money. Are we or are we not paying subsidy? Then why do we hear reporters to subsidy has been removed?
No, so, listeners got to understand that whether we pay subsidy or not depends on the price of crude oil.
Okay.
Right. So when the price of crude oil falls, let's say below $60 to maybe to like mid 50s or even under $50, then we will not be paying for fuel subsidy. Right. And that's because the template that is used to determine the price of fuel includes a component that provides for the price of crude oil in the international market. Remember that fuel is a byproduct of crude oil itself, right? So now, whenever those oil prices are down, then we can have government not pay subsidy, right? Now, but when crude oil prices go back up, like I think it's been in the mid 60s or early 60s, or just slightly over $60 per barrel over the last few weeks, then we pay subsidy. That's just what it means. So officially, as an official government policy, subsidy hasn't been removed. So what they've done is that sometimes they'll come and say they are removing it, and then later another government agency will come out and say, oh no, we're not removing it, it's still there, and back and forth. So there's still not, I don't think the government right now has the courage or what it takes to definitively remove fuel subsidy. And that's because of a lot of the pushback they're getting from labor. And I don't think the way the country is now, the government is willing to deal with a labor crisis. I'm not sure that's something that, they have the stomach, for at the moment. So that's why you see a lot of all this back and forth. But in terms of, official government policy, subsidies is not removed. And so whenever we're not paying subsidy, just go and look at oil prices. You see that it's been down. But when we are paying subsidy, go and look at oil prices, it's going up. Ironically, when oil prices go up, it's good for us as a country. But in terms of government revenues, but on the flip side, most of that money basically goes to FOSUP. So it just doesn't make sense, really. Continue to pay for this thing. Yeah.
All right. So when we hear, just thank you so much for breaking that down, because it's really important. We keep coming back to this conversation like, I thought they said they removed subsidy. So now that if fuel prices go low, then no subsidy. When it goes high, then there's subsidy. All right. Let's talk about NAFDAC, NERC, this
NIGCOMSAT.
NIGCOMSAT. Others opting for self-funding. So some government agencies on Wednesday opted out of funding from the federal budget and refunded millions of revenues due to the consolidated revenue of the Federation. They took the decision at the ongoing investigation by the Senate Committee on Finance on remittances of internally generated revenues by ministries, departments, and agencies of government. The panel is probing the MDA's compliance to the payment of 1% stamp duties on all federal contracts. So if I understand clearly, Ugo, this means that they're saying that they're self-sufficient. They don't need any more money from the government. But there's a reason why they're saying this. Please explain to us.
Well, I mean, I read this and I was kind of elated, at least some good news.
Yeah, it's good news.
So basically, some of these parastatals, are telling the National Assembly, look, you know what, no need to budget for us because we are self-sufficient in the way we run. So each time you budget for us, we end up refunding that money back to the government. And in previous times, right, you know what used to happen? They probably would not have come out to say this because they usually, before the end of a budget cycle, that's when you start to see government agencies start to spend this money recklessly and start to share, because whatever is left by law, you have to refund it back to the consolidated revenue account or something like that. So in the past, they weren't really strictly adhering to that. But in recent times, with the introduction of TSA and all this stuff, you actually have no choice. If you don't spend that money, it just goes back. So what these parastatals are now saying is that, look, I don't need to, I don't need your money. I can survive on my own funds. And the likes of NAFDAC, NERC, NIGCOMSAT, they basically make money through fees that are paid to them from a lot of the agencies that they regulate. Yeah. Right. So, and some of these fees are quite, significant. But where I have a challenge is, and people who criticize, things like this would always say, look, this is also why we have a lot of problems around ease of doing business, where sometimes it looks like regulators are competing with the private sector. Yes, so they end up charging a whole lot of fees. Yeah, because they're making a lot of money. And mind you, a lot of these fees are being transferred to us as cost, right? So people who need to maybe get NAFDAC to approve one thing or the other, or their food items or whatever it is they're bringing into the country or manufacturing, NAFDAC is charging them, a lot of fees, right? Because that's why they're telling you that they don't need government money. So there's a lot of fees coming in through there, and so, but that money is going to be, charged back to you and I, and in a way. So
in a way, it's not really good news.
Well, at least to an extent, they're not getting the money twice.
But we are still the ones paying for it, because if they're not, initially I thought, oh, good, okay, so we now have self-sufficient agencies. But if it then means that, because they have to make money somehow, they're going to then task the people. Already we're talking about how difficult, some of these things are quite exorbitant. So one of the questions I'll ask is, who is regulating the regulators? I know that's an obvious question, but do we have people that are actually representing the people so that we are not overburdened with?
That's the National Assembly now.
And that's why, but when they are chasing up things, someone
things happened in 2000 and 2005.
They don't have enough time to really protect our interests. And I speak for business owners, because I've heard tales of what people go through with these agencies and how they have to pay through their noses. That's one. Then number two, of course, they had to maximize profits, and they had to. I understand the part of, okay, don't give us more money. You are making enough money from the people. There's just something quite unfair there. Maybe it will be good if we ensure that our people, our representatives, are protecting our interests and ensuring that they're not taxing us, and we're not having to pay through our noses to run a business in Nigeria.
I agree, but that's why you have FCCPC or something, right? That's the Consumer Protection Council and all of that. They're
quite effective, though, to be fair.
Yeah, they are. But the thing is that I agree with you. There's got to be someone checking the regulators as well, and just be sure that they are not overburdening the country. I mean, I did speak to ease of doing business earlier and how these things affect, job creation and wealth creation in general. So, but it's better that you don't have these agencies having funding from both sides, from companies and from government. So if they're taking up government one, then that's fine. Right.
All right. Thank you. Tayo from Aja says, I hope all these MDAs don't forget TSA, that's the Treasury Single Account, and other accountability measures as they claim to be independent. Congrats, Ugodre and Nairametrics. And then James says, the tales of woes for business owners should fit into Guinness Book of Records. That's what James says. Well, if things will change, don't worry. The ease of doing business, they're working, the council, they're working. So look, we're hoping for more, for a better business climate in Nigeria. Okay, let's talk about the CBN. Talk about regulators and who is regulating the regulator. CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria, queries First Bank as CEO as the chief executive officer is purportedly ousted. The Central Bank of Nigeria yesterday queried the board of First Bank Nigeria Limited over the removal of the managing director, chief executive of the bank, Dr. Adesola Adedunton, saying the action was without regulatory approval. So I want to understand the limits and remits of the Central Bank of Nigeria in the affairs of banks. Can they really have a say in how they conduct their affairs in terms of hiring and firing of their staff, or is it overstepping their boundaries perhaps? But please take us through this, because this has been quite contentious. A number of people have had conversations around this. Please take us through this, Ugo.
Yeah, very, very, contentious issue here. So first of all, the CBN, the banking sector is one of the most tightly regulated sector, in the country. The CBN is, one of the strongest regulators out there. And so the CBN has also given banks, the CBN also told banks that a CEO cannot be in charge for more than 10 years. So the CBN does not decide, who a bank should not even decide who a bank appoints or fires as CEO. Now, however, the CBN does approve, the CEOs of banks or even members of the board of directors of a bank. The CBN does that. If the CBN does not approve, then that person can be CEO or MD or even a director in the bank. And the reason why the CBN does this, in case you're also wondering, is that the CBN has over the years also provided a lot of funding or some kind of intervention for a lot of banks. And because banks basically are too big to fail, a lot of the banks you have now, the CBN now says, okay, look, I can't protect you on one side without holding you on the other side. Mm-hmm. So since I always backstop you, then I have to have a say in how you operate or how the people that actually manage these banks, because you're holding customers' deposits, right? So that is just the principle around a lot of the regulatory back and forth you see with banks at CBN. Now, on this particular matter, First Bank guys claim that, look, historically, CEOs of banks have always done 6 years of their own bank, like First Bank, which is a subsidiary of FBN Holdings. They've always done, 6 years. And after 6 years, it's just typical for you to leave. The current guy, Adedson, came in, after the previous guy did his own, 6 years and left. So it's normal. What's the issue here? But the CBN is saying, well, his 6 years is not even up. He still has about 8 months to go. So why the hurry to get him out, right? And then even the CBN doesn't, because I read a memo from the CBN yesterday to the bank that kind of leaked. The CBN is saying, look, you even have, 10 years to go. This guy is just in 5 years and some months, so 5 years and 4 months. So why are you, telling him to leave now? But the bank is saying, well, it's usually 6 years and he's still under 6 years, and so you can go. Normally, you go on a leave, maybe a garden leave or something like that. Yeah, so that's the typical debacle here. But it kind of seems like there's something going on. There are undertones here and there that we're not sure of, and it's very important for people to be very careful when you see all these things going, because a lot of times you don't have the entire information, the entire picture of what is going down. Yeah. So before you start to take sides and start to, be a judge here.
Yeah. I mean, beyond even taking sides, Ugo, the reason why, just to bring up that conversation, is like you mentioned, you want to ask, is Nigeria an a micromanaged country. So we have, regulators almost breathing down the neck of establishments. And is that a good thing, or is that what obtains in other parts of the world, or should we relax a bit? Because in the same way as the allocations to states and how the federal government wants to be in the business of everything happening, should we, take off our hands a bit more and let people run as they ought to? Now, this is speaking generally as a nation.
Yes, I mean, a lot of us will advocate for, less regulation and less intervention in how private businesses run their affairs, right? But regulators, if you don't want regulators to come into your space, right, then don't give them the reasons to. And for banks, the reason why regulators come in is because they also give out a lot of very bad loans. These bad loans are, depositors' money, right? Yeah. And so when a bank goes bust, who comes in to protect the banks, to step in, to ensure that there's no bank run? It's the CBN. So based on that, you see them come up with all sorts of very tight regulations. Yeah. So that's really the issue here. And sometimes they really go overboard. And a lot of people know that the CBN, they're just one of the fiercest regulators out there, right? Because of just the way, and this particular CBN is very fierce when it comes to regulation. So if you don't want them to come into your space, then don't give them that kind of opportunity with the way banks carry out their activities. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. CBN, yes, it will be. The First Bank is holding on, to the new guy, saying, look, Mr. Gbenga Shobo is their MD, but at the end of the day, the CBN will have to approve anyway.
Yeah, I know it. Thank you very much, Ugo. Great conversation this morning. Thanks for coming in. Just two more comments and then we go. Modupe Sanda on YouTube says, so long as we don't refine our crude oil, you either pay higher prices for fuel or the government pays subsidies. And then says, it's still good news. That's with regards to the agency's self-sufficiency. This is how the system should work. Ideally. That's it on the show this morning. You can follow Ugo at Ugodre on Twitter, and special mention at NairoMetrics on Twitter as well, award-winning NairoMetrics. And then you can follow us at Smooth981FM on Twitter and use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981 to take the conversation further. Please don't forget to join us in a few minutes for Grapevine 981. We'll be talking about some stories, maybe big stories in the entertainment world. Let's talk, relax, and have a great time. It's Smooth 98.1. Love music, love life. Thank you, Ugo. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.